at a later date. In terms of Aware360, they clearly understand people are the most important part of the workplace, and they look to provide tools that ensure that they will have the necessary help when needed. This ensures people are safe, especially when they're exposed to the unusual risks that are present in the COVID-19 world. We are fortunate enough to have 3 speakers today here and the chief drivers of Aware360, their CEO, Steve Matthews, their chief technology officer, Robert Forget, and their chief operating officer, Jim McDade. I'm going to now pass control of the presentation over to Steve, and he will kick things off this morning. So if you're just patient with me, please otherwise join me in welcoming Steve, and you should have control of the screen, Steve.
Thanks, Brian. I think I just got control. Give me a sec and I'll pull up the slide here. Thanks for the kind words, the introduction. Also, like to thank Justin Beaubier from Crystal Creek Homes, who's walked us through some of the basic use cases or scenarios that you might face in the industry. And between Brian and Justin, we've been able to develop a basic understanding and you know, be able to reach out. Brian, I'll just check with you. Can you see my screen okay?
I sure can, Steve. Looks good.
Great. Okay, thank you. So I'll just do a quick introduction to Aware360 here, and then we'll actually roll into the application that that we're in the process of creating and that we're running today. And also we'll do a live demo, which our CTO, Robert, will run for you. So company's been around for about 15 years. We started working with the Alberta government originally, keeping different workers. I think we've got 14 ministries now where we're keeping those workers safe and connected to monitor centers. So here in Calgary, STARS uses our software to connect lone workers in oil and gas. But we have many different industrial sectors we work with. In construction, we've worked with companies such as Stantec to keep their people safe and connected. We got about 5,000 Alberta government employees, including AHS, which is actually aggressively rolling out with us right now because of COVID. Some of our partners that we work with, we've got 19 partners across the country, but probably the largest that everyone would know is TELUS sells our solution commercially for lone worker solutions. So a little bit of lots of messaging here, lots of emergency SOS responses. We're actually using the same platform to begin the process of a construction safety application, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on lone worker and our monitor partners and all that this morning. We're actually going to really drill into the COVID applications that we've been able to create. Just quickly, current clients, you'll recognize a lot of the brands here. You can see a wide range of outcomes. So we're looking after home care people in Catholic social services. We're looking after oil and gas workers. I think we've got the energy regulator inside the government. We've got liquor and gaming, all sorts of different folks in BC. We've got Technical Safety BC and WorkSafe BC, and lots of other government departments there as well. So just moving into, you know, what problem are we solving, or how you know, how did we become aware of construction safety applications that might be helpful? And I've known Justin Beaubier for a few years at Crystal Creek Homes, and he came to me and said, hey, we need to make sure that some folks are visible and seen, and it's very easy for us to make sure that folks are screened before they get to a site. You know, we can see who's on the site because we've made some commitments around the number of trades on a site at a certain time. And so Justin spent some time walking me through what might happen there. And to Brian's point earlier, our mandate is, if we were to say, you know, why are we doing this? It's to help the industry be compliant with COVID protocols that you might develop yourselves. They may not be legislated, whatever protocol that you develop, it's to help you easily be compliant with that protocol and to be able to demonstrate that compliance in terms of data with the industry or a regulator or an inspector, if you want to share that data, concrete proof that you are doing the things and that your industry is in a leadership role, not waiting for the government to take the lead, but to Brian's comments, trying to keep the industry open and moving. So that's how we approached, this construction safety application. So a couple of the features, basically, Robert will take over the screen shortly and demonstrate, but you'll see a little bit of focus on pre-screening, real-time viewing of trades inside each project area, reporting that allows you to show who is at a project area, and also, the ability to use that reporting to show compliance as you choose to do so. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Brian. If you can turn the presentation over to Robert Forget. Robert's our CTO, and he's going to demonstrate how this application works.
For sure, Steve. Thanks very much. Robert, you should be in control.
And I am sharing my screen.
There we go. I can see it now, Robert. Thanks.
Excellent. Very good. So as Steve was mentioning, our platform and app was originally built specifically for lone workers, and I am demoing from our main Safety Aware instance. So there's going to be a lot on here that isn't necessarily applicable. So I'm going to really focus down to what Steve had mentioned, the real-time aspect of the service, being able to see who's on what site when, the reporting aspect of it, so you can see who enters and who exits and when they're doing that post event. Screening, as it was mentioned as well. It'll show that on the app. So this is a mirror of my device that you can see here on the screen right now. And then specifically, we can talk through what compliance looks like based on the information that I'm showing. So I'm actually going to start on the web portal side. This would be the main screen of the web portal. You'll see that we have a news feed here. We'll have all the people that are in the system, as well as everybody on the map and where they happen to be. Specifically for our application, we're going to look first at the logging or the reporting of a site. So an administrator or supervisor would be able to go into the system. In this case, I'm going to do a site that's a fair size site as opposed to a single building site, but it will give you the idea of how it works. And I'm going to do a site around my neighborhood because I know where I am. So in order to draw around a site, you can zoom in to whatever level you like. So you can do a site around a commercial building. You can do a site around an area. You can do a site around a person's house as it's being built as well. There's no real limitation to the size of the geofence, and there are no limitations to the number of geofences that you create at any given time. You can do a circular geofence, which is remarkably fast to do, so you only need to do one point and drag it, or a polygon if I want to do something a little bit closer to where I'm putting the people. So in this case, there's a geofence. So I've already created a site. I can name this site whatever I feel like. I associate it to a client, and then I can also associate it to a single user in the system as well if I don't want to be tracking certain people and only tracking others. So in this case, this would be a logging event for anybody entering this site. So what this allows you to do, once I save it, is whenever Robert, in this case, comes on site at the beginning of the day, it will generate a log event. So Robert Forget entered site blah at time. Everything in the system's timestamped. We can see the history of an individual person, and we can see all the sites they've entered and exited over a certain period of time as you select it. I can show you that also. And then what this also allows you to do then is have a report, which would be a generated report scheduled, and then emailed to you. So at the end of every day or the beginning of every day, you can see that day's events for all workers on all of your sites. I'm going to skip back to the app now for a moment. So on the app, whenever you're first logging into it, what we have done is we have set up the screening capability inside the app. So whenever I first log in and sign on to the app, you'll see that it automatically pops up a screening form. In this case, this one is based off of the AHS form. Forms can be customized, so we can put a different question in here if needed. They can also be rules-based. So in this case, I'm clicking no, and whenever I click no, it's giving me the next question. If I click yes, there's a different type of reaction inside of this screening application, telling the person to do something. So if I selected yes for question 1, hey, contact 911, you're in trouble already. In this case, I'm just going to go no throughout so that we don't end up with that. Once it's completed, you can then submit that to the back end, and it'll give you immediate feedback, the assessment's being submitted, etc. All of those screening forms that are filled out are stored in the system, so you'll be able to get at them at any point in time after the fact for all of the workers who have done it. We also have the ability of doing the same or a different form inside of the app itself. In this case, I've got it named Journey because that's what we were using it for before, but this can be whatever form you like as well. The other piece of the screening is that once you're signing on, you have a location associated to it too. So you'll know where that person filled out that form for the screening. You'll know when they filled out that form for the screening. Another piece on the back end, similar to the first one where we were logging geofence or a site. This is a little bit different as it allows us a real-time view of an area. So in this case, where I created that geozone before, actually I'm going to zoom out a little bit and make a really big one just to show you what this looks like. So this can be used by a administrator or supervisor as well, and they can create any kind of a shape that they like of any size. Similar to the other one, I'm selecting a specific client for it, naming it. And this one, what it does is it will automatically display all of the people who happen to be inside of that area as soon as it's created. And you have the ability of selecting a certain person, multiple people, etc. And you also have the ability to broadcast message to them. So if you're looking at a site and you see that you've got people in that site that shouldn't be on that site at that time, you have the ability of sending a message to them in real time right through the system. Etc. You also have the ability of setting up as many of these as you like. You can save them all, and they can be embedded as well. And I should have mentioned that whenever I was showing you the first geofence, where you could actually have a larger site for an area where you have multiple projects going on, and then you can have smaller sites around each of the houses or each facilities that are currently under construction. One other thing to mention here, if I go back to the main screen real quick, you can automatically find a location of an individual right from the main screen in real time. As soon as you click on them, you'll see that it narrows down everything that you're seeing to just that person. In this case, you can see here's my submission that I just made through the screening application, and all of my answers to the questions that were asked of me whenever I signed on at the beginning of my day. Also inside of this map, we have the ability of doing layers. So in this case, if I zoomed in, I'm limited to whatever the map happens to display. I can go and flip over to a satellite view instead, so we can see me sitting here in my house. Alternatively, if it's a new area that's under construction, we do have the ability of putting an overlay on that map. So if you have CAD drawings of the roads and the site buildings, that can be overlaid on the map so that you actually have a view of what's planned before the work is completed, and it shows up as part of a satellite map or a streets map from Google or Mapbox. So that is, in the effort of brevity, the demonstration of the specific items and functionality as associated to the construction industry. And I will pass it back to Steve to carry on the discussion.
Thanks, Robert. Just leave that screen up. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to leave the screen up for a second? And I'll ask Brian to transfer it over to me in a minute, but just for everybody who's listening. So what you're looking at, as Robert mentioned, is our full safety aware application that's driven for lone worker. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there's a whole bunch of different menu items. We haven't spent a lot of time on this platform, and other than it's how we're going to create the trial, and it's where our knowledge base comes from. So today we've got 5 builders involved in a trial, and we're creating the reports daily. So off the platform, we're creating a report for them so they can see who came and went. All of the screening forms are sent to their email address for saving, and they can at any point in time show that everyone who entered the site was completed the screening, was compliant. If the form that Robert showed you is if they actually fail, that's an intelligent form. So as Robert goes through it, or as the person entering the zone goes through it in the morning, if they fail the test, if they answer a question that would be a fail for you, you wouldn't want them on site. For instance, they've tested positive. Then they get an immediate notification that they shouldn't enter the site, and also the email goes into the data repository as well, so that later on you can prove, that all the folks that entered the site were compliant. They actually attest to it in the form. So you've got this ability to pre-screen with some intelligence in it. So Brian, could you hand back the presentation to me?
We can, Steve. Just hang on half a sec.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. So as Steve was mentioning, that was the email that I just pulled up on the screen here. At
You should have it now, Steve.
Great. Thanks. Thank you. So just confirming that you can see my screen, Brian?
Sure can.
Great. Okay. So I moved into the trial. So as Robert was showing you, we repurposed the existing platform. We're doing a 2-week trial, and the purpose of the trial is to just make sure that we're actually providing the right features and functionality, and that it's simple. It's a simple use outcome. We're not charging for the trial at this point. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 5 builders that we're working with different use cases. So single family residential, moving into multifamily larger areas. And so what we've essentially created in the existing safety aware solution is the screening form, the intelligent screening form, and a question where a tradesperson is asked who they're going to work for, which builder are they going to work for. And so in the trial, the builders are choosing up to 3 project sites with a couple of admin users and site managers, and basically walking through it with us for a couple of weeks. And so we're loading the builder. There are 2 or 3 sites. We're creating the geofences for them so they don't have to do it right out of the gate. And we're also entering the tradespeople who will visit those sites during the trial. And then we generate a report daily. And so, what does success look like in a trial? It looks like us getting good feedback from those builders and their site managers and their admin users, and making sure that as we build out the new application, the new app for the Google Store and the Apple Store, when that app is rolled out, it has what you need in it for phase 1, to show compliance, to really focus on the mandate and not other things that we've done in the past. So we're asking the builders that are participating to join a weekly meeting with us just to get their feedback, make sure we're going the right direction. Certainly willing to provide an update to anybody who registers with us as to where we are in a couple of weeks. Right now, we're on schedule for a full launch on the week of May the 4th for a new application, which we'll for now, we'll call the construction safety application, but we may get better feedback from you guys on how to name that. Just 1 second here. Whoops. Sorry, just go back 1 slide. So basically this new application, builders would be onboarded as full enterprise clients of the platform that you just saw. And it would be locked down just to focus on the CSA mandate, you know, keeping everyone compliant and making compliance easy to track. And then tradespeople would use the CSA application and they'd register and pay individually through the application. So fairly simple. You guys have seen this before where the app downloads and then you're able to pay and then you're part of it. And we're in the process of creating some online video and FAQ support so that builders can create their own geofences and do, you know, many sites. And the admin users will find that relatively easy, but we'll walk them through how to do that. And then site managers and admin users will be able to see all their sites in real time and who's on their site in real time throughout the day at any point in time in the day. And then the reports will be, the reporting features in the beginning, we'll probably create the reports once a day and make sure that everybody has them, but eventually that'll be a dashboard where you'll be able to create your own reports. So typically today, we're in the market with our lone worker solutions through TELUS, for instance, for large volume construction clients or, well, any TELUS clients at about $25 per person per month, including monitoring services and other things. And so working with the 4 or 5 builders that are doing the trial, you know, we're in this price range of about $10 per person per month. And looking at discounting for the first time subscription, and then with a 1-year subscription discounted quite substantially down. And our thought process was after the initial period, everybody could subscribe on a month-to-month basis, you know, which is fairly normal for apps. The purpose of the minimum first time is to get us up and running, and also to create a little bit of a community where we get some feedback and some focus. That's pretty much it for. We wanted to respect everyone's timelines. I think we were aiming for about 30 minutes, Brian, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Steve, very much. There's a couple of questions in the chat room here, and then I've got a few after that. So I think the first one is the acronym that you use, CSA, that some of our members might find that confusing with the Canadian Standards Association group. Is it possible, the question that's asked, is it possible to run maybe a little bit of a different acronym that won't cause that confusion?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. And we chose that for internal purposes, but we're happy to take feedback from the group. You know, this is a solution that's intended to be for the industry, not for Aware. So yeah, we're happy to take good advice on better naming convention for it.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Second one that's asked is, will Aware360 be offering a corporate rate that allows a flat fee for all employees?
Yeah, we could certainly look at that. So we're really relying on 5 builders and that we're starting with, and some of the feedback we get from the membership about the best way to do this, but yeah, we are open to discussing. We typically do enterprise pricing, so the builders might have a different set of circumstances given that how they're using the platform.
The other thing, and I think this is a related question, is it possible for similar pricing to be available for tradespeople? And I think, and if the questioner wants to clarify this a little bit in the chat room, I think they're looking that as they employ trades, they'd like to, if I can, this very imprecise language, but kind of staple them on to their package, and so they would kind of come and go as work comes and goes.
Sure, yeah, another great question. So we can bundle together groups of tradespeople to make it easy for a trade or a builder. The concern that we had with that was to really support volume. I mean, what would make this really successful is to have broad adoption. And so to really move quickly, it's much easier if people self-onboard. So they basically download the app to their phone, they pay right away, and they can get moving. And some of the advice we got was that inevitably in the starting phase, there might be a situation where somebody showed up, a name had to be changed, or something on the day of was different than forecast. And so somebody shows up and they don't have the application. And how would that get handled? And so we really wanted to put it through the store if that would work for the group. Again, happy to take more feedback if we need to bundle up for trade companies rather than just the individual tradespeople.
So maybe I ask, and the follow-up question that pops into my mind, Steve, is if I'm a trade and I may work for an array of builders and I get the app, and let's say 3 of those 5 builders is part of the Aware360 network, am I able to use my app then to go to builder 1 and then to go to builder 2 and to go to builder 3, so I can kind of link in as I go, and so I get essentially connected to the different networks as I sign in?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So that's exactly how the solution works, and one of the reasons why onboarding tradespeople individually and having them move around as individuals is more flexible and more focused for this application than having them grouped as trade companies. So they might be moving around, and so that feedback, the early feedback we got was better for them to log on individually and then associate themselves with builders as they move about their day, depending on which site they're going to. So that's how that's our first cut at the architecture, is to have it that tradespeople onboard individually, and then they associate with builders and sites as they move.
Okay, thanks for that. Does a trade get a notification to answer the questions once they enter a geofence? So if their app is live and they go to a particular builder's site, does that trigger then what I call the worker pre-screening?
The way the pre-screening works at this point in time is that actually it comes up when they sign on, and in the pre-screening it asks them which builder are they working for and which site are they going to. And so they'll do that right at sign on, and when they leave the site they'll sign off. Typically they'll get a notification when they leave the geofence, they'll get a sign off notification. That could also, if the group, if the feedback directs us, it could also have them fill out a form about the site, information about the site that the builder might want to know as they're leaving. And they'll sign off. And then if they sign on again because they're going to another builder site, they'll get asked the same questionnaire. Where it will go past the trial and into phase 1 is it will be geofence driven. And so it'll be as you get close. One of the challenges with that is we want to be very careful with the battery use of someone's phone. So if we're constantly looking for position reports or position updates in real time, it does consume some battery. So for now, we said, well, let's just do it when they log on, and they'll log on for each site they go to. And we'll see as that develops if it's better to associate with geofences based on the feedback we get. Either one is possible, is the short answer.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Steve. I have actually, while you were going on, and I've also had the benefit of having seen the presentation a couple of times before this. I've got a bunch of questions, and I'm just wondering, in some of them, it might be illustrative if we pass the baton back to Robert to show his screen, and then between you and Robert, you can navigate the questions, because I think there might be a little even more demo of some of the aspects of it if we could go that route, if that works for you and Robert.
Sure does.
Okay, so Robert, I'm going to pass it back to you, and the live demo you had might be the way to go. And the first question I have, and while I'm getting ready to ask my question, here, and is with respect to the documentation form, Robert. And let me know if this is going to work here, or if it's best that Steve has control. But the first question that I've got here is, if you put the form back up that you had, it was a little bit small when we saw it. So that's, if you could just make that a little larger on your screen so everybody can see that. So that's one aspect of the form that I think is kind of custom on it. The last time we saw it in the demo, we were able to bring up the Alberta Health form. Is that also possible?
It sure is. So it's, I can pull up any, like a direct one from AHS is what you're looking for?
Yeah, just as a quick piece. And I guess where I'm going, just to reinforce it, is, there's another question just popped in, which was going to be exactly my next question. Interestingly enough, we're all kind of thinking on the same lines here. So the first piece is you get documentation of fitness for work. So you check that box. And as you were discussing, Steve, both before anyone gets on site, and also to have stored to produce if it's asked for, correct?
Yes.
And to the extent that it gives us all comfort, you can absolutely use the Alberta, like directly from their website, the Alberta Health questionnaire, correct?
That's correct. And so in the beginning, in the trial phase, that's what we're using. But as we move forward into the actual launch of the application, we'll be able to customize that per builder, per site, even potentially as we get geofencing more detailed. So yeah, absolutely, we can customize that. We can do a number of different things.
Perfect. And so the next question is from Prominent Homes, and it's exactly where I was going. You could put a job hazard assessment form on the site that needs to be completed, and that would also help address specifically COVID-19 issues. There could be a checklist about hand washing is on site, porta potty sanitation has been checked off, that sort of stuff, correct?
Correct. So we already do that for a number of different clients where they have very specific forms like vehicle inspection forms before a journey. Job hazard forms are filled out by WorkSafe, and they store all those forms for their records. So that's a current application.
Right. And then there's another question here. Could the screening form be considered a legal document if someone untruthfully said they were healthy and came to a job site? Could the form be used to support the documentation piece? And there's the Alberta Health form up on screen there.
Sure. Yeah, we do want to include an attestation in the form so that it's not just, there'll be a question that says, hey, I've completed this form truthfully to the best of my knowledge, so that it becomes an attestation. I can't speak to the legal, how that plays out, but definitely we do want people to complete the form and to say, hey, I've done this to the best of my ability with all the knowledge I have, and we want that recorded for all of you.
Perfect. And it's also fair in the geofencing aspect of it. you're able to clearly document and record if your policy is one trade on site or one person on site or two people on site, whatever it is, it's clear to be able to go back and demonstrate that, correct?
Yeah, you'll have a report that will show who is on site and the time they were on site. So overlap will be evident. We may want to change the report so that that's actually highlighted by trade type. And also to your point, any questions that you want asked about the site as the trades leave, that can be a sign out from the site where that form gets completed. And so the builder has visibility into how the site matches up with compliance requirements, or even special events. You could ask, for instance, someone leaving, did anything happen on the site? Was there another trade there, or did somebody come into your personal space accidentally? So it could be documented later, or used later if it's helpful to the group.
And lastly, there could be free form fields that just say attended site, completed X, Y, Z of the work, so that it would be, you'd also, in addition to the COVID-19 compliance, you'd also get pertinent job information as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's a current feature set of the platform.
So the next question is a little bit of tracing, because I think that's important in this whole piece. If someone was on site 5 days ago and now tested positive for COVID-19, it's possible to backtrace that and notify those who may have been in close contact or were there at least in time proximity to the person who tested positive. That's fair, correct?
Yeah, so we'll be able to go back and search by that person's name and see where they were over the last 14 days, and then notify people. Obviously, there's some privacy considerations there. We're actually in touch with the Alberta government on how they want to do contact tracing. So there's some privacy considerations, but without naming the person that tested positive, we could certainly give different clients advice as to who was close to someone who tested positive without naming them, right? So there's a little bit of sensitivity around that, but certainly we can provide what we call location-based tracing.
Yeah, to build on that specifically, I've got my screen, I've been kind of going through as we've been answering the questions here, but right now what I did is a history of me, and you can see here, I entered Geofence Robert, I named it Robert whenever I was playing with it yesterday. So being able to do that, I can look at whatever the date is, or a whole series of dates, find all the geofences that person was in on, and then go to the geofence report and see all the other people that came through to that. Similarly, you could see I'm set up as an asset group painter, so we can have all the separate trades as different trade categories. There's no limitation to what kind of groups you can create. So if it's different providing companies or specific builders, it can be done like that.
Thanks, Robert. So we're kind of getting close to our time, and we're kind of running out of questions. The only other piece that I have an ask here on is the working alone piece, because there's now a much different dynamic in that we're asking people to work alone, and working alone is the precautions for employers around working alone are important and can't be diminished in this time. And Steve, you started out your conversation this morning about how this is an app, or your prior versions of it have been focused on working alone. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that in the environment we're now in.
Sure, yeah. So basically we have 19 monitor center partners across Canada, and we connect companies to those partners so that they get 24/7 coverage for people working, and that kind of lone worker focus, where you have somebody working in an oil field, on a construction site, industrial construction we've done before. That connection allows everyone to go home and feel good and know that their folks are looked after. And that reactive solution has been our past. And now we're moving more and more into things like just on a larger scale, not only keeping those people connected, but giving them information. For instance, we have a cognitive awareness solution that somebody takes the 60-second test and it compares their baseline results against the previous 20 tests and lets them know if they should be operating that piece of yellow iron or not. You know, are they fatigued? Is there some other issue that they're kind of just not ready to work? And, you know, so we're getting away from just reactive lone worker into here's some information that helps a guy make a good decision before he starts his day. And so that's a little bit about where Aware360 is going. And this application, those lone worker features, the ability to do pre-work JHAs, all that capability will get introduced into this as we move forward over the next few months. But we really wanted to start with this COVID-19. How do we keep the industry compliant and aware? And this, you know, maybe I should ask Justin to quickly, Justin Bobier, I think you're on the call. How are you using it? Because you gave us some good input, and I know we've both been busy. We haven't had a chance to connect a lot, but perhaps I could ask Justin to share with us how Crystal Creek Homes is using the application.
Well, initially when we took a look at this, some of my major concerns were our tradespeople on site and the compliance of us ensuring that, you know, we only have a couple people on site, and how do we actually mandate that and be compliant on it. My concern is we know that, you know, best practices are we should be doing this daily, but we end up getting busy and we don't collect the data properly and we're not compliant. And so, you know, could there be a solution to allow that? The other concern that I had just from our customers asking, hey, well, who's been on site? Is somebody tested positive? You know, we don't really have a way of collecting that data. And, you know, at first I looked at this really as a competitive advantage for Crystal Creek Homes. And my mindset shifted when the Ontario legislation came down about closing residential construction, that this really needs to be an industry-wide practice if we're going to stay open, because we are judged by our worst member in our industry, and that we need something to ensure that there's compliance on our job sites, to ensure that when somebody does test positive, that we can go out and let others know that they may have come into contact. And I think from a trades perspective, they really look at this as a proactive measure that we're doing what we need to do to keep our job sites safe. So that was really the reason that I wanted to have this app developed, Steve, and how we're implementing it in the field right now.
Thanks, Justin. That's very helpful. Steve, if it's all right with you, we're kind of getting, again, close to time. I'm going to make you the presenter, and if you would put your last slide up with your contact details, and I'll make, while that's happening, I'll make one last call for any questions there might be into the chat room.
Great. Thanks, Brian. I'll just pull that up again.
So thank you, first of all, to both you and Robert for running through the presentation. I think you've provided all the attendees here this morning with a wealth of information on a tool they may find useful. Again, the presentation has been recorded and will be posted under the subject to the correction of Lauren Herschel, who I think is still connected. It will be posted under the COVID-19 resources on Build's website, the presentation will. And as you can see at the end of Steve's presentation, you can contact Aware360 directly for more details and pursue whether this tool is a fit for how you guys are working on your sites. Again, I think the big thing that we all need to note here is that we are enjoying, our industry that is, enjoying the privilege of continuing to be a essential service during this very difficult time. And that privilege has to be re-earned each and every day. We're in regular contact with folks at the provincial and municipal level around this, and sharing our perspectives with them. And thus far, based on the performance of our industry, we're able to stay in that category. But as Justin pointed out, it's important for us to continue to earn that. So again, I want to thank Steve and Robert for making time for us this morning, and also for the large crowd that joined us. Really pleased to see everyone out this morning, and thanks very much for that. And if there are no other questions, I'm going to say thanks to everyone and wish you a safe and good